This is the Mentoring Club's forum to discuss topics about mentoring. We are a global community that believes in changing the world one leader at a time through mentoring. We are also a nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide a mentoring community for aspiring and seasoned leaders. Anywhere in the world, we help working people find mentors who can guide them to develop the skills they need to achieve their career and life goals. We help mentees fulfill their goals through meaningful work that creates positive impact in the world. As mentees become leaders, our dream is for them to become mentors to others. And we want to attract people who believe in our leadership core values. And what are these? Integrity, honesty, commitment are values anchored on trust. These are values that make us trustworthy as individuals and professionals. Health, vision, execution are values anchored on leadership. We need this to be successful leaders. And lastly, the last group, humanity, contentment, family, are values anchored on community. At the end of the day, these are the social grounding values that make us feel fulfilled and happy. And now I will turn over the floor to Jorim to introduce the topic, the speakers, and some moderation guidelines for us.
Thank you, Liesel. So today's topic is lead from where you are. Leading from where you are emphasizes taking initiative and inspiring change, regardless of one's official position, actually, and it encourages individuals to use their strengths to make a positive impact of any kind. And today we have three guests here that I will quickly introduce who will help us discover more about this topic and find different perspectives. I'm sure that with their own experiences, we will have some different and very interesting perspectives here. So our first guest is Anagha Todalbagi. Anagha is currently a product manager at Microsoft, where she works on cloud databases. She has a master's degree from Cornell University's Department of Computing and Information Science. She has 8 years of professional experience as a software engineer, building back-end SaaS and AI or NLP systems. As a tech lead on various projects in microservices and monoliths, she has played a key role in architecting and designing solutions, planning and collaborating with teams in an agile environment. She likes to give back, that's why she's here, to the community through mentorship. She enjoys practicing calligraphy, reading, and playing tennis in her free time. So that's our first guest. Our second guest is Hasan Rafiq. He's the VP of Organizational Development Center of Excellence at New Seller, has over 15 years of global experience in DEIB, learning and organizational development, HR transformation, and leadership development. He has a deep commitment to innovation and has built systems and tools that drive greater equity within organizations. For this work, he was awarded the 2019 DEI Innovator of Year Award by Great Places to Work. Hasan has a track record of building systems of equity within organizations and leads with DEIB as the center of the employee engagement and development strategy. So I have an idea that we're going to talk about that a little bit. The last I want to introduce is Robert Shepard. Robert is deeply passionate about his work and who he works with. Enjoyment in his role has helped him bring success, which in turn has helped bring promotions, allowing him to manage an ambitious team of reps across EMEA and APAC. A lover of technology, old and new, combined with a seeker of people, keeps him focused and aligned with global colleagues, regardless of time zones and locations. As someone with 15 plus years of experience, he has learned enough over the years to understand he'll never know it all. And he's okay with that. That really resonates with me. I would like to just welcome all of you, and I think I will just do the following. I will pose one question and then see if we can just go with the flow. And whoever of you feels like speaking first, you just unmute yourself. And if it gets too messy, then I will step in. What does it mean to you to lead from where you are?
It's a great question. And we've heard it over the years from so many influential leaders. Think back to people like Steve Jobs, people like Jack Welch, so many more, Simon Sinek, and many, many others. It may sound cheesy in a way, The one thing I always take is be the change that's needed. It doesn't matter how you do it, it's about trying to do it. For myself, it started with the very first lockdown. Working for a global company, I decided that I would reach out, get to know my global colleagues in the US, and we put 30 minutes in our calendars for what we called a virtual coffee and just make it a non work related call where we got to know each other. And in doing so, we got to realize our strengths and each other's strengths. And we realized what our company needed, what our team needed. We could see alignments. We kind of coached each other in a way that positioned us both for the beginning of the roles that we're both in now. You don't need anybody to ask you to do it or to tell you to do it. Just go ahead and do it. Most times it will be applauded, it will be recognized. I would just say be the change that's needed.
Great, thank you, Robert. Anagha, Hasan, you want to jump in too?
I would piggyback on what Robert said, Simon Sinek. Something that he said has resonated with me. I know in one of his talks, Sinek says leadership is a choice, not a rank. Yes, titles help, but a lot of times I think it's about just standing up, taking the lead, and taking initiative and caring for people around us. And I think we can make a difference from wherever we are without necessarily having the title, but going for it and taking care of the people around us and ensuring that 1 plus 1 would be greater than 2.
Yeah, I love that. And I would just add is looking at and understanding your own leadership leads us to boil it very simply down to being human and understanding of others. Sometimes it is initiative, sometimes it is creating the space where others take initiative. It's taking the back seat so that others can flourish. I also see it as an opportunity. Like Anika mentioned, we get choices every single day to make an impact, and it's up to us if we want to take that choice or not. So, leading from within does mean you are co creating solutions with others, you're amplifying others, you're creating the space for others to do better. And when that happens, automatically you are doing better. I feel it is more collective rather than focusing on individuals. And the moment you start to look at the collective side of leadership, you realize you are part of the larger whole. This also reminds me of I think it's an African proverb which says, if you want to go faster, go alone. If you want to go further, go together. And that to me is leadership.
I love that proverb, and you're right. I think many times when people take initiative, and when I reflect on my life, that's certainly the case. It is creating something for others and for myself. If I feel confident enough that I can make a change, it doesn't really matter what position I'm in. The question that I want to throw into the room as a person in some kind of leadership, how can I help other people to believe in the ability to take initiative? How can I encourage them to be proactive, to take a lead in whatever way?
Let me share an example, if I can, and apologize, I'm jumping in. When someone comes to us with a question, how do we listen to that question and what's underneath that question? Sometimes it is they may have a problem that needs to be solved. With coaching as my background, we are trained to listen for what's the insight that can be generated here where this person takes the initiative. Oftentimes, what I see is what managers do is within a split second summarize their whole life experience and they say, this is how I would solve it. That's not going to help the other individual take initiative. It is thinking through with them and generating insights for them so that you don't get that same question or problem the next time. The reality is, whatever that manager has summarized as a solution is purely based on their experience. And we know from a diversity lens, I may have different situation, different circumstances, and I may import that solution from my manager and it may not work for me. And I am also training my brain to go back to my manager with the next problem. That also ties back into leadership is, are you creating opportunities for others? Are you listening and deeply listening to what they're trying to convey and not convey, creating within that space the opportunity for them to experiment, because we all experiment and we all make choices, and that creates impact, whether positive or negative, but that's also an opportunity to learn, to take initiative, and polish our own leadership in a space. Sometimes it may be uncomfortable, but growth happens when we are uncomfortable, and that's an opportunity for a leader to create that for others.
I love that sentiment, Hassan. Something you said as well the first time about bringing the human aspect to everything. It sits with me hugely. I think it's so important that we get to know each other. It's not just colleagues on different time zones, different continents, different offices. We're colleagues who know each other. It's being genuine in how we get to know each other, I think, as well. It's like taking an interest. That is a huge step in bringing that process to begin. The rest of it then is down to the willingness of the other people to kind of meet you halfway. We can only walk with them if they're willing to walk as well, I believe. And I think that part of it, it can never be forced, it can never be rushed. It has to feel natural, I truly believe. Absolutely love what you said. And I totally agree with it. Piggybacking on kind of what you said the first time to what you said now as well.
To add to what Robert and Hassan said, listen and empower. I think in my experience, I've noticed being a facilitator after you've listened to them and learned where they're coming from, ensuring that the culture is also supportive for them to be able to go ahead with their ideas or plans. I think a conducive environment definitely helps with accelerating the implementation. And I've noticed that when I've been in a position where I can do that by being a sponsor on that particular team or for that particular person, or when someone else has done that for me, like a senior leader on my team, when they have made the space for me, I think that has always helped with being able to take that initiative and feeling more confident in what I'm doing.
That makes a lot of sense. Anagha, maybe you can start sharing. What does such a nurturing environment, such a encouraging environment look like ideally?
In my experience, it can be different or it might not always have the same formula to get there. But I would say two things that I have noticed that have been like common factors would be a collaboration and trust, where people implicitly trust the other person and are open and willing to collaborate and work together.
Yeah, I will add. There is so much that I want to say, especially on this piece. Is when you join an organization, when you are in an organization working, it's understanding what is the culture of this organization. What do they praise? What do they value? What do they not value? In some cases, a very simple example would be, how do leaders talk about failures? And do they see failures as an opportunity? For example, scan many organizations and see if the CEO gets on stage at an offsite of 5, 600, 1,000 people and talks about his failures in life. You won't find that, because it means you have to be very vulnerable. And vulnerable is the birthplace of us being human. And the moment you do that, you lower down your guard. So you don't have to go on the stage to do that. In our day to day interactions, how are we being vulnerable to one another? Do we have enough trust with one another to be that person? Share our shortcomings and value that share, but also have an action plan on how you will mitigate those shortcomings as well. So that's one. The second piece is, as a leader, are you curious about your people? Robert made that comment earlier, and I 100% agree with him. Is, if I am not curious about who you are, as an example, you ask someone, how was your weekend? Weekend was good. Okay, let's move on to work. Good is not a good enough answer. I want to know more. What did you do? What does good look like? Say more about good. And that deepens the connection that you're genuinely interested. It's not like probing someone about their weekend, but it shows and conveys that you want to have a different conversation. So being curious about others. Finally, I think empathy plays such a big role in understanding and nurturing an environment where people feel that they are valued. They feel that you see them for who they are. It's very different to sympathy. It's trying to understand the individual's circumstances, what they're going through, and finding a little bit of yourself in it, because that strengthens the connection, builds better human beings. Whether you are a leader or not, I don't care. I care about, are you a better human being, and are you getting better every single day as a human being? Because your human being comes first, your title or your leadership comes second.
I totally, totally echo that, Hassan, as well. And from everything that everyone is saying, it makes perfect sense that we do take time, we get to know each other, we be genuine with each other. What you're saying as well, how and how the leaders convey their failures as well. I am part of a global team of business development reps, and one thing I love doing, I love shouting out successes and recognizing successes, but I love bringing failures to the table as well. In a group environment, creating that safe space where we can bring it to the table and talk amongst everybody as colleagues, as a team together, and thinking about how a team can help each other. It doesn't matter how we do it, but in our world, it's had a prospect on the phone today. The call was going good, and then suddenly it took another direction and I didn't know how to pivot. And it's about how we help prepare for that next call. And not just that, it's about how do we lift that person up as well so that that's not on them. They don't take that personally. It's part of everyday life, it's part of work. And it's about what we're going to do next and how we're going to do it. So I think that is a huge part to play. But like you said as well in the beginning, it comes back to that human element in everything. Do I know you well enough as a person that if I say something, will you hear me from where I'm speaking from and not take it in a different tone? And I think that is so important, because I want to speak to you as a friend first, then as a manager. The manager and the leadership part is always second. Like you said, roles, responsibilities, they're put to one side, and it's about us as two humans connecting, then taking it forward from there. I totally echo everything.
Great, thank you. The next question that I wanted to ask has actually been partially answered already because all of you already have described key qualities of successful leaders. What was mentioned was being genuine, being authentic, taking initiative, being proactive, showing vulnerability. But I wonder if there's anything else that you would add or any of the things that I said already that you want to expand on.
I think you cover a lot of it. The vulnerability, I always say be real. It's be yourself. Bring who you are to everything you do. Every company has global processes for everything they do and every team that does them. But that doesn't mean that you need to show the corporate side of it. Of course you do. That's the professional part of it. But it's about bringing yourself to the equation as well and letting yourself shine through in that sense. When you're part of a team that is constantly emphasizing that message from the beginning, success finds a way. And from success, then there becomes encouragement, there becomes enjoyment. It then becomes fun. It no longer seems like a chore. I always say be real and be yourself. The other things will find a way to fit into place from there.
I just have a curious question because this is something that I encountered as one of the questions that younger professionals have asked in the past. The question about influence and authority. I got this question from a woman in tech. And so maybe Hassan may want to speak to this. Her concern as a woman engineer in a room full of men, whenever she speaks her mind, she actually gets talked over. And she's thinking, so how can I influence if I don't have the authority? Maybe between Anagha, who's also very young in terms of her career, is also in engineering, right? So maybe Hassan and Anagha, if you'd like to comment on that. And this is definitely something that we'd like to share with women in tech, especially those who are starting their careers.
Yeah, I would love to hear from Anaga, but I can start. I can share. We have done some work in this space. I think it is an understanding of what's the ecosystem that you're entering, and it's a choice that you make when you're joining an organization. Now, organizations also make choices to diversify their workforce so there is good representation. But we know we have a long, long way to go to get equitable representation in tech, not just for women, but also for people of color. So in these situations, you are at a little bit of a loss because I do want to be very fair and transparent because you have to understand that the environment that you're entering an in group. The reality is you have to understand how that in group functions first. You have to look for allies who will support you in your journey. And then you also have to take and pick opportunities where you can speak your mind, because you also don't want to touch the third rail all the time, and that is going to alienate yourself. Be very cautious there. At the same time, I also find there is so much work happening in the space of allyship, especially from men's perspective, that they seek out diverse perspectives. It becomes really hard when you're the only voice. Oftentimes I call the lonely only voice in a room, where nobody looks like you, thinks like you, or even in some cases may not speak the same language. So there is a feeling of being an outsider. If an organization values outsiders, it's going to promote that culture. So you will feel that you are being at least seen and heard for a little bit, and then someone talks over you. Biases are true. There are so many examples of women having a great idea, and then the same idea is shared by a man and it is welcomed and valued, and that is a reality. It is sad and it's unfair, but sometimes that also happens. I would say there is no answer to, or a perfect answer or recipe for success in this case. It is understanding the ecosystem that you're part of, identifying a few allies, speaking your mind, picking opportunities where you will feel that they are going to pay attention to these aspects, and then building from there.
I agree with what Hassan said. As someone who has been in a similar position, I can share more about some things that worked and some things that did not work. This was at one of my previous jobs. When I was new, I did take a while to learn that I have to first understand what the culture is like, how people here work together, and just in terms of like why some people trust some people versus not trust some others. Based on my experience, I learned that to have influence on someone, they need to be able to trust you. They need to be able to trust your decision making. Some ways that I was able to build this on some previous teams was I was the lead on one of the projects where we had to make a build versus buy decision. This involved the company having to pay for a certain product or say yes to working on something for a few months. I was able to work with a mentor and figure out a game plan in terms of coming up with an idea, like in terms of like the architecture, design, pros and cons, what are some things, and what is the solution that I'm advocating for. Worked on that, practiced, and then identified who the key stakeholders are for this decision making in terms of who are the people that I would have to get buy-in from to be able to go ahead with this decision. After identifying them, I was able to set up some time with them prior to the decision making meeting that we were going to have and have a discussion in terms of what, according to them, is important for this particular project that I was working on. I was an engineer, so this is part of the engineering team. So, in terms of the reliability of the service, what would the uptime be, and various other factors that would be important for our customers. And based on that, I was able to take into account what was important for the other senior members on the team and people who would have a say in this decision making, and ensure that I addressed all of those questions beforehand. And also practice this with other mentors and other people that I knew in my community, but outside of work, just to be able to get different perspectives, to be able to answer all the questions that I would get. After this exercise, I did feel like I had built a better working rapport with people around me and was also able to gain that trust and credibility for me to be able to influence some of the decisions that we made as an engineering team. I fully agree that different solutions work in different situations, but this was one of the things that worked for me.
This goes back to the point earlier where if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, then you actually have to bring others with you. And I heard the word allyship also from Hassan, which obviously in your example, Anaga, you had to work through the team approach and understanding what would it take to get through that project successfully. The question was about how can you have influence when you don't have authority. It's really building that influence through your relationships with other people. Through those positive relationships, authority pretty much comes from those relationships, if I'm getting it right. Would that be a fair summary?
Yes,
All
fully
right.
agreed.
Halfway through the hour, and so Jorim, I'll just go ahead and reset the room for some of the people who are joining us. How do you lead from where you are, right? So, how do you develop those key leadership skills that make you successful? This is what the room is about. And so, I'll turn it over again to Jorim. Feel free to open up the floor when you've covered your questions, Jorim.
Thank you, Liesel. I've just become aware of something that I wasn't aware before. The title of our session today, Lead from Where You Are, can really be interpreted in different ways. And I naturally understood it as lead from where you are in the sense of me being who I am and leading from there. But of course, with the question you asked, it can also mean leading from whatever position you're in an organization and not requiring a leadership position to exuding leadership. And I think that's really cool. The other people already were aware of that, but I did want to mention that quickly because I think both things are good reminders. We can lead from just I don't have to pretend to be anybody to lead. In fact, as we heard, being genuine, being real is probably the best thing you can do in a leadership position. You don't have to be in a leadership position to take on initiative. How important do you think it is for a leader to keep an eye on the mission? And how does he or she do that best?
I think it is extremely important because the mission is the soul of the company or soul of the project. What you set out to achieve for yourself first, and then also the collection of people who are inspired by that mission. The challenge here is looking at how the environment is changing around us. So you may have seen all the tech companies growth, and now growth is slowing down. That is an opportunity for leadership. The behaviors that come out when growth is slowing down is a very good opportunity to look at what does leadership really mean. Are we still building for the long run or are we down to quarter over quarter? Very important from a mission perspective because that's where you will see values being challenged, especially in tough times, and different behaviors emerging as a result of that. The second part of that is when you join a company, there is a part of the mission that aligns with what you want to do in life and the impact you want to have on the world. So I also think about when it's difficult times or there are shifts happening in the market, there are global shifts happening, and the mission is starting to change based on that, and the leadership behaviors are also changing. It is your opportunity to think about, does the mission and values still align to what I want to do in the world? Now, it's easier said than done because then you have to make strong choices, difficult choices. Leadership is where you make difficult choices. When everything is going really well, it's easy to be a leader. When things become really tough, that's where our leadership is challenged. That's where our alignment to mission is challenged. Our values are challenged. The strength of your character as a leader will show up in those difficult times the most. As you're doing that for yourself, you're also role modeling for the teams that you lead. Even though it may be official title that you have, I always think of it as no matter what title you have, if I can see followership behind you, people who aspire to be like you, are inspired by you, you are a leader and you may not have any title. There's so many examples in organizations where the person may be a very high performing IC and everyone looks up to him or her. And in this case, they have created followership, which is the leadership in its true essence.
I totally agree, Hassan. And I think there's one thing I'd love to add to what you were saying as well is when things are going well, life is seen as a bed of roses. Everything just comes together naturally. But it's in those tough times where, yes, leadership is challenged, character is challenged, people are looking to see what comes through. But I think as well at the same time, the team is challenged. That's where we find the character of the team as much as we find the character of ourselves as a leader, and we find the strength of a team as well as the strength of us as a leader, as a person. As you said, the mission is critical. It's the core of everything that is happening. And I think being able to let the team in on what the big picture is vital from the beginning. any mission is going to be broken up into bite-sized pieces, as it were, so that we achieve something, we celebrate that success. We move on to the next part of it. We achieve it and we celebrate that success together as a team, and we move on to the next piece of it. It's all part of that mission. And I think being able to recognize that we're 30% towards our goal of completing the mission and letting the team know that that's their achievement is vital to continued success in everything that comes.
To add to what Robert and Hassan said, some things that I have seen or at my one of the startups that I worked at was to have regular check-ins every quarter to make sure that all of the goals that we are working towards are in alignment with our mission. And if things have changed, to make those changes, similar to what Hassan said in terms of keeping track of our surroundings and the current climate in terms of what's happening and whether we still want to continue doing and moving in the direction that we have planned to.
This is Mitch from Sweden. Very interesting conversation. Thank you so much. I work in tech, and a lot of people on Clubhouse are very tech oriented. Leadership is a very difficult topic to unpack because they're soft and hard, but the conversation is so valuable because I heard a lot of soft power information that you're sharing. And that's why I shared the book Culture Code by Daniel Coyle, because some of his thoughts are very much resonant with what you said. My question is around technologies, right? So a lot of us work with tech or big companies or small companies. Are there technologies that you have seen that have helped leaders gain more influence or gain more mastery of the culture or the purpose, or any technology that you can recommend or have seen that has helped a leader succeed in turbulent times?
I love the question. You're framing it from a technology. If coaching is a technology, then I would say it is, because whether you are in tech or non tech, you are a human being. And we know from neuroscience how the brain works. And in our brain, there are neurons that fire when you're about to make a decision or when you're about to learn something. Over time, they are on autopilot, which means habits are formed and we think in certain ways. I would say that the best technology that we can use there is how to rewire our thinking about situations, whether it's people related or work related or task related or project related. How do we take our thinking to the next level? And you can do that through coaching, where you generate insights and challenge the current thinking of an individual on a certain task. That is expanding of their brain power to understand what are different ways of doing it. Building a muscle, especially helpful in difficult times, where you become more laser focused on certain things, and that is the birthplace of a tunnel vision, where you can't see the broader picture of what's happening around you, because our threat response, which also generates from our brain, does not allow us to look much broadly. I would suggest, if there is technology, it is to think about our thinking and to broaden our thinking to be more expansive in how we look at the world and the challenges that come with it.
What do you think of that, Mitch?
It's good, thank you. I'd love to hear from Anaga and others. We've had chats in other rooms about employee sentiment technology and all this ideation technology, innovation technology around getting new ideas, getting more engagement in employees. I wonder if these types of technologies are being embraced by you guys or encouraging it just to be able to get more lift. As leaders, you're really trying to have mastery of data on your market, data on what's happening in your business, not just the hard stuff in your P&L, but people analytics, right? I wonder if that's coming up to the fore.
I'm thinking in terms of like data analytics, or like in terms of like the human aspect of it, how they're doing. Some things that I have seen work, two things come to mind. First one is at one of the companies that I worked at, the CEO used the donut option on Slack, where he would talk to one employee every week to learn more about what they're up to, how things are, learn more about them as people, and to also learn more about their teams and if something is blocking them from doing their best work. I thought that was very helpful to be able to get a pulse of the entire team. Another thing that comes to mind is a lot of collaboration software like Miroboard. Miroboards, in my experience, can be used in a way to build a more inclusive environment where people can write out their ideas. This way, it's not the loudest person in the room that's always winning, because There could be introverts, extroverts, people who are comfortable speaking up, people who aren't. So this way, everybody's given some time to think through their thoughts, ideas, etc., and write it down, and then post it on this Miro board, and then the team can look at it together. These are two things that I have seen work.
That actually reminds me of the tool that Hassan used during our Mentoring Matters talk, which is Mentee. From there, he was able to get a sense and even a different perspective of the group in the session than he would normally get in some of the previous sessions. Hassan, the tool is Mentee, right?
Yes, and it originates from Sweden. So it's called Mentimeter. There are multiple tools out there for us to analyze, to collect the data. What I also feel is, are leaders taking enough time to understand the sentiment? And it's boiling it down to getting a pulse and bringing it down to the managers to say, you take a pulse every week and you make a decision. That means you're enabling your manager population to truly act like leaders. If you're getting from the pulse burnout as high, then you need to make a decision. If you're getting low motivation, you need to make a decision. But oftentimes, these technologies are used, or these tools are used, to do a semi annual analysis of people pulse survey and then an action planning. I feel that it's too late. You might have taken the survey in March and April, and you're getting the results and doing an analysis in June, July. It's too late to do any action planning on it, because human interactions and human engagement is a pulse. Just like you get a pulse every other second, that's how we need our engagement to be.
Previous question is regarding technology. I wanted to go back to what Hassan said prior to that, which is leadership is really all about people, right? And the interaction. Work is not done by machines, and ideas don't come from machines. It's come from people, and the commitment comes from the people. It all boils down back down to that. For a lot of times, I've used all kinds of technologies. We get to agreement. People say they are all jazzed up, and things don't get done. And then it takes going out and have a drink with people, and then you understand what's on their mind, which you never would have gotten any otherwise, right? They thought, oh, somebody else was going to do this or something, and the ball is dropped, and some major thing happens. Yeah, it's all about how a lot of people get all aligned or realigned, which is also very important because the market changes all the time now. How do we adapt and realign to something new and call out that we need something new, right? And things like that are going to happen a whole lot more. So, yeah, it's true. We need leaders everywhere in the organization. Every means you need to use. Meeting people in person, sometimes that's irreplaceable.
I actually feel like adding to that because it makes me think of deep conversations are best to be had in a conversation, ideally in person, but also possible online. But it does require self-awareness from the individuals. I think self-awareness is really important, not just for a leader. It can be very helpful for everybody. So when something doesn't get done, if I am a follower, can be self-aware of what's going on with my motivation, what's blocking me, what are my limiting thoughts around a certain project. There are certainly tools that can help with that. As Hassan already said, coaching can be considered a tool that can be helpful in that can enable important conversations to be had. Robert, I just saw that you unmuted yourself too, so please go ahead and share your thoughts.
Thank you, Joe. And human engagement, part of it all, as Hassan was saying, is the pulse of everything. And we can't underestimate that by any means. We live in a world of technology that is changing by the minute. It's constantly evolving, and things are always being upgraded to the latest version of something. Human engagement brings so much more to the equation, to the table. And Tom was saying, going out for a beer, sitting down for lunch when you're in the office together, just having that conversation in person gets so much more achieved than a full day of Teams calls, as it were. Because you've been able to convey in person, read each other, understand each other across the table, you're much further along the line in the process than you would be a full day spent on a planning session via Teams. I think a lot gets lost in translation. That side of it is so easy for others and for ourselves to take in many different ways. But when we're around a table together, sharing a lunch, sharing a drink, sharing a pint, whatever it is, we can speak openly, honestly, freely, but we can speak together. And I think that's the important part of it all.
I'm encountering that issue myself, right, with the startup I'm doing with the team. My team, I have recruited a really extremely high caliber team. This person is in the right position, they are most highly experienced, and all these things. And yet, the most productive idea that's put forth and executed comes from somebody else. People talk a lot about teamwork, clear roles, and things like that, and clear mission. All right, sure, check, check, check. Okay, now you have another situation. Should you reorganize the team now? Then that's exactly what we are going through. Not because we didn't put the right person in the right place, but as it turns out, things are happening in a different way. Do you acknowledge that and say, this is worth reorganizing the team? Yeah. Human work is very complex. I just wanted to add even more to that one.
Hong, that sounds really very, very familiar from all the places that I've been. It is a common occurrence where you realize that, oh, the team needs to reorganize itself because certain people have specific strengths and certain people need help in certain areas. In order to focus your work towards your mission, you have to recognize that and evolve the team.
Let me do the quick summary first, and then whoever can stay stays a bit longer, and we have two questions lined up. We came together today around the topic of lead from where you are and really looked at that statement from two different perspectives. One of the personal being human, which means getting to know the others, listening, perhaps being a bit of a coach, certainly being the change you want to see or being the change that's needed. And then from the other perspective, lead from where you are, meaning that your official position doesn't matter. Do you have people looking up to you? Do you inspire some other people? Do you take initiative? Then you already take the lead. Then you're already a leader, even though you might not have that role. When it comes to not having the position and wanting to influence, what helps us? It helps to seek allies and it helps to understand the system you're in. It can really be a big change if you first really deeply understand what is going on in the other person or in the environment, and then potentially initiate some kind of change. I asked one question around the importance of keeping an eye on the mission, and it resonated that that was important. And communicating it is also important, not just having it somewhere, but communicating it and looking back to it, talking with the team about it, noticing if it changes. I think in traditional management literature, it's a lot about predict and control, predicting what's going to happen and controlling what's going to happen. And this sounded a bit like moving into an area of sensing and responding, sensing, noticing what is happening, and if necessary, responding to that. So knowing your direction and also being flexible to whatever is changing or happening around. And then we talked about collaboration and trust. And here it came up that it is important to notice how failure is seen. That can be a good gauge of how the team culture is. The question is there vulnerability? The more collaboration there will be, the more trust there will be. And again, a reminder to be human first and leader second. That could mean having lunch or a tea or a pint together. To close up the summary, this is actually really good. We live in a world where lots of things change, technology changes every day, etc. But leadership at its core doesn't. Because leadership is about people and relating to people. There are certainly different tools that we can use to relate to each other, but at its core, I think that there is not a lot of change, that it is something that over time has to be relearned, but it is not ever changing as is the technology that we use or can use.
Thank you. Thank you for that summary.
I want to give it over to Mitch again.
Thank you for the summaries, Joran. I just wanted to ask, for leaders, critical thinking is important. Any tips or suggestions around leaders improving their critical thinking skills?
Happy to give it a go. I'll emphasize give it a go. Something that worked for me in the early days of when I joined my current company, I took on the mantra of be bold. It's funny because our executive leadership team have used that as a company theme this year. I wasn't afraid to reach out to global colleagues, senior roles, different teams, different departments, get to know what they were doing, get to know how they did it, get to know how they worked in their own team, and get to know what was important, how they prioritized things, because it helped me understand the bigger picture beyond my immediate role and beyond my immediate team, so that success then impacts the whole company and not just me as an individual and not just my team, but it plays a bigger part in the company. It's one of the reasons why I'm a champion for calling out successes. And like I said earlier, bringing our failures to the table as well. I try to let people see that what you're doing matters to the company. I never want people to think of themselves as just the role they're in. I like to help them see maybe the bigger picture, maybe 2 years down the line, when that role changes and when the company gives them the opportunity to step into something so that they're already thinking that way. I've created a lot of good friendships with genuine people across the company this way. It's helped me personally, professionally, but it's been a huge success in how I've changed my thinking. If that makes any sense, Mitch.
Thank you. So on point.
To add to it, I think in the chat, Mitch had also mentioned in terms of critical thinking and what problems to solve. That reminded me of a blog post that I had read some time back where they spoke about the blue tape philosophy. When you have the house walk through and you need a few things to be fixed, you just put blue tape there. So similar to that, the author recommended putting a blue tape for all the issues that you see as soon as you get started at a new workplace or when there are too many issues, and then sitting down and looking at all of them together and addressing the top three or addressing them one at a time or in like a few sets each time. This is something that I have been trying to work on in terms of not attacking all of the problems at the same time, but trying to collect all of the problems or what I would perceive as problems, looking through them objectively, prioritizing, and then working on it.
Caroline wrote, "It appears that the more we move to digitalization of our world, the less we become human. How do we ensure the younger generation, who are more inclined to the digital world, understand that technology enhances human interactions but does not build human relationships?"
Sure, happy to take this. The questions around how to ensure that it helps enhances the relationship but not always builds the relationship. I would agree and disagree here because I would say some of the teams, or even on my current team, I have never met my manager in person because both of us work from different places. And we've been able to build a relationship virtually through video calls. I do agree that nothing can substitute meeting someone in person and building that human relationship. I mean, it's perfect if we're able to do that. It's definitely more organic and easier. However, given that we are in a post-pandemic era, I would think technology is a great substitute for us to get started on that path. I'm on the same page as the person who asked the question in terms of, yes, ideally it would be great to meet someone in person, but I also believe with technology, and if we don't have another option, we can make it work through video calls.
Thank you. I actually want to add to that question as well. I lead a men's group that is international. The purpose of it is to have meaningful conversations, specifically around topics that men often don't talk about or not seriously talk about. We've been online since day one using Zoom since January 2019. There is a desire for people to meet up in person. It has happened on some occasions for some of the members. Some of us are in Portugal, I'm in Spain, some are in Helsinki, in Germany, in the US. It's very difficult to actually organize a get together for everyone. But I think we create every week a deep connection through the virtual technology that we use. I don't think it feels like a substitute for in person interaction for any of the members. I think it serves as this is better than not doing it. The desire to meet in person, I'm not sure whether that is diminished by having that virtual deep connection. Maybe a little bit, but I do know that everybody still wants to meet up in person.
So, what I'm getting from that is that if you have the opportunity to meet in person or to talk in person, that would be your first choice. However, if that's not possible at all, then it would be such a loss if we don't use the technology that is abundant around us to be able to connect with other people without forgetting the human relationship angle or the human emotions and the characteristics that make us social beings in the first place. Our want to get connected with other human beings with similar interests or even differing thoughts or perspectives so that we can learn and grow more from those interactions. Thank you for all of that, and and thank you for sharing your thoughts and experiences. Naj, did you want to?
Yeah. Thank you to everyone who shared their insights. I resonated with the last one, like the technology and the human relationship, because during pandemic, I think I wouldn't be able to survive the pandemic if it weren't for Clubhouse. I got away from the mainstream media and tried to find other alternative, and I found Clubhouse. And this is where I met the Liesel, the mentoring club, and amazing people on the app. And I'm based in the Philippines, and there's no way of going to a place and meet people from different parts of the world. So Clubhouse is a technology that made it happen. And actually, it really saved my life because we lost everything, our businesses during the pandemic. And just a share from what was talked about, technology and the human connection. Thank you.
Thank you for that. You're very fortunate to really have made great connections here on Clubhouse. So some of the mentors that you have seen join us and mentees that joined us today were made here on Clubhouse. It's been a win for us in terms of growing our community. So I resonate with what Naj has said. Please join us again next month. Our topic is securing your dream job, and it's going to be on May 10. And it's going to be in the afternoon Pacific time. So we're trying to rotate the schedule so that we can cover the 6 continents where we have mentors and mentees in. With that, I will be joined by our mentor moderator from New Zealand, Leslie Peterson. Our guest speaker is also somebody who we met here on Clubhouse, Brian Golod. He's based out of Canada. And then for our Zoom and LinkedIn live session, we have one coming up on April 27, and it's about product management because product management was one of the top skills that our mentees have communicated they need help on. Topic is designing for influence using behavioral science for effective product management and leadership. You can register for this event on Eventbrite. It will be Zoom and LinkedIn Live. And also, we'd like to mention that beyond our global mentoring platform, where individuals come in, become mentees, and connect with mentors, and the relationships pretty much become autonomous so that it could be individualized to the mentees' goals. We are also offering a corporate mentoring program where we can come in to help companies set up their mentoring programs. We call it Lead Mentoring Program, and you could find that under our website under the menu Consulting. And if you have any questions at all, connect with me, whether here on Clubhouse, send me messages on the back channel or on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to engage with anything that the mentoring club could be helpful to you in your journey. So, with that, Jorim, any last words from you before we close the room?
I just want to say thank you for everyone joining in and asking the questions. This was a great session. I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Thank you, and have a good day, afternoon, evening, night, whatever time it is for you.
Thank you, Liesel, for having me. This is a great experience learning from everybody here, and the questions were great and insightful.
Thank you. And thank you for all of those who stayed. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the journey.